It sucks. And they obviously have to. I wish him well. I mean, that's obviously the first thing. I don't think he's ever suffered an injury like this ever in his life, and it just kind of came out of fluke overall play. So yeah, I, it sucks.
What's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Kruse's another edition of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow us across social media at MTGP ETP. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Ben at Ben Kruse144. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on ETBpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. And this show, Moving the Goalposts, is presented by Playback. Stay tuned to find out more. Okay, so there's a lot to get to today. I can't believe you're repping your Jayson Tatum shirt on this very fateful day. Well, for you, it's a great day for me, is how I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great day for me. Knicks are up 3-1. There is, I would say, not guaranteed, but by the time the show comes out, could already be done. The story might not even change at all. Very good chance they go to the Eastern Conference Finals, which, as far as I'm concerned, for the Knicks is a successful season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't been this happy about, actually, it hasn't been that long. It's only been about 7 months since I have been this happy about one of my teams. It's only been about 7 months. So, this team almost reminds me a little bit of the OMG Mets, a little bit. Like the Knicks, they sort of became like lovable underdogs this season. And I think that they deserve a ton of credit. By the way, even though the Celtics don't have Tatum, the Celtics are still favored by 4.5 in Game 6.
That's crazy.
It doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like they would be favored by 4.5. I wonder what the odds are of who wins the actual series. I'm looking at that. I'm trying to find that right now, but I can imagine it's totally flipped in favor of the Knicks.
Yeah.
But this was, forget Tatum. We'll talk about the Tatum injury in a little bit too. But outside of that, if you're a Celtics fan, this is just a terrible day. It's a terrible day because a lot of Celtics fans were very cocky going into this series. I get it. They were the favorites. And also the defending champions, and they were probably, I would say, the favorites to come out of the East. And then you lose to what is kind of a rival in the Knicks. And the Knicks were not expected to win. The Knicks are not as skilled of a team on all positions across the court as the Celtics. And the Knicks are now up 3-1. And the Celtics' backs are against the wall, and now they don't have Jayson Tatum. But if you're a Knicks fan, I would say, look, this season so far probably looks like a success going to the East. Even if we don't make the finals, but the Knicks have a really good chance of making the finals, is how I would put it at this point. They have a really, really good chance, like an order of magnitude greater chance than just 2 days ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll get into the Tatum stuff, but it's been really, really disappointing. I kind of felt pretty good about this series. And there's even a lot of Knicks fans that were like, half of them, I bet. I mean, unless Nick, like, you're a diehard Knicks fan, that's one of those massive delusional ones that are like, all right, we're going to beat the Celtics. You probably weren't thinking before the series that the Knicks were going to beat the Celtics, but maybe give them a tough fight. But as they say in sports, that the games specifically aren't played on paper. It's specifically played specifically, you know, on the court, on ice, on the field. And the Celtics, it came down to blowing not only one but two games in your home court. It's simple as that. It's one reason to obviously blow one of the games, but to blow two specifically out your building, um, is heartbreaking. And I think that was kind of the overall, the start to it, because of course, yeah, the Celtics obviously weren't shooting the ball well in either of those games in the second half, but they had the control. I also do think, and I'm not here to make any type of excuses at all, because the Knicks are where they have to be, and I give them a lot of credit. But also the impact of Kristaps Porzingis not being at his full potential at all. He's been completely more of a non-factor than usual. And during the Celtics finals run last year, Kristaps Porzingis was one of their top guys specifically. He gave an overall down post presence, a pick and pop type of guy, brought energy. And he's completely, I mean, the guy specifically is battling potentially long COVID for all we know. And so he's been absolutely a guy that just can't play out right now. Horford, just know that you're up there in age. Drew Holiday obviously has been very up and down. So, I mean, just look at this overall season, and I just, yeah, I mean, you could obviously make a case that the Knicks weren't expected to obviously win the series, but sometimes, and I'm not saying the Knicks got lucky per se at all, but sometimes you have to be a little bit lucky. I mean, the Celtics got a little bit lucky last year. I'm not going to sit here and not say it, but that's kind of sometimes the part of sports is you kind of have to get a little bit fortunate. And I knew for a fact that Jalen Brunson was going to have his legacy type of game. It sucks it turned out to be one of the games specifically that our superstar, had a catastrophic injury, which we're going to talk about. But, the Knicks are where they are specifically because they should be. They're a very, very good team. And it's it's what it is. It's going to be a really, really tough offseason now for the Celtics unless, they miraculously come back from 3-1. I could definitely see them possibly winning one more game and maybe the Knicks completing it at MSG at this point in time. But now it's basically for the Celtics fans, including myself, it's basically post Jayson Tatum now, which it's just hard to even fathom right now. At least for another year because now Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Pritchard and all these type of guys, you just really don't know about this overall future to think. So it's crazy how from one season was everything going great, being the defending champs, to the following season about to be bounced in the second round, and your star player more likely than not is not going to be around for another year. So sports can sometimes be a cruel game, but I also can't sit here and not discredit the Knicks. They've been fantastic. And they got a lot from their secondary guys as well too. You got look at a guy like Mikal Bridges, who really came alive in that fourth quarter. Karl Anthony Towns obviously still doing his thing. And you also talk about this too, Nick, right? That you said how the Knicks have a pretty good path going to the finals. This might be one of the more clear paths to get into the finals for really any type of team, right? The Celtics, who are one of the perennial favorites, eventually coming out of the East, they're probably going to get bounced with whether it's next game or the game after. The Cleveland Cavaliers are basically on the brink of elimination tonight of this overall recording against the Pacers. I mean, that's more of a 1-4 type of 4 matchup. I mean, I definitely could see the Pacers kind of more upsetting the Cavs in a series and the Knicks upsetting the Celtics. But I mean, shit. OKC could be bounced this round for all we know. It's really, I think at this point in time, anybody's ball game. And so I know I kind of went a little bit of a tangent there. I had a lot of stuff, but
you have a lot on your mind, I can tell.
I have a lot on my mind currently right now.
This is like the second week in a row I'm on the winning side of this.
Yeah.
A post-game podcast where I'm on the winning side. I'm not used to that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and also typically a lot of times we talk about, Nick, a lot of injuries on your side too.
Look, injuries are just a part of the game. Like I'm
not.
No,
I get it. I get it.
I mean that was the biggest thing last year, where Knicks fans were kind of okay with. Knicks fans were kind of okay with how everything ended last year against the Pacers because we were injured. But I will also say I think the Knicks benefited last year. The Knicks benefited from injuries way more than they were hurt by injuries. I don't think they would have made it as far as they did if not for injuries. I mean, they played the Sixers with like an Embiid on one leg. Like it wasn't like the Knicks just like didn't benefit from injuries themselves. And a lot of the games against the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton wasn't healthy either.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's kind of why we sort of but yes, everybody kind of got injured at the end of that series last year.
And I think you guys should have won that series last year. Because you guys had that, and now I think which is going to be really fascinating. I mean, presumably, I'm obviously looking ahead, but now the Knicks fans can look at the Pacers series and be like, listen, we could compete with them. We literally just went and beat the defending champions in the Celtics. I mean, the Knicks basically are like the Mets right now in their mentality of why not us? And
Oh,
basically,
yeah.
it's like we're basically going for the ride and living for the ride. And another guy too, Nick, that I got to give a lot of props to, and I got to sit here and be a buck about it. Coach Tom Thibodeau has completely outcoached Joe Mazzulla, I'd say, in the majority of this series.
I agree.
And I think Missoula, the Celtics team as a whole this offseason, it's going to be a massive reshape. And I'll talk about another show because I don't really feel like talking about it right now. But yeah, I think that Coach Thibs, for all the slander and the stuff the guy has, he is not only the Knicks overall, the players and stuff are really stepping up, but Coach Thibs, the coach, is stepping up. So that's obviously one X factor that I think a lot of people don't really realize is the coaching aspect has been completely on the New York side.
Yeah. And no, yeah, absolutely. And there was so much criticism of Thibodeau during the Pistons series. And the truth is, I think that there's just a lot of things that are just kind of out of his control. Like, I don't think the only reason the Knicks are playing so well against the Celtics is just because of Thibodeau, or that the only reason they struggled against Detroit was because of Thibodeau. I think he deserves some credit and some blame for both. But a lot of it is really just the players being clutch. I mean,
Yeah.
people tend to be so. It's weird because like we live in a very like individualist society, but also love team sports, and we very much like tie a team success to individuals. Like, how many times do we talk about Michael Jordan and LeBron, and we talk about the number of rings they have and things like that, or just any other star player? We talk about the number of championships they win, like they do it as individuals. And then we move on to like head coaches, and then we apply that same thing to head coaches. Like for a team like the Knicks, who don't have anybody as good as say like any like top 5 players in the league or anything like that. But yeah, and look, don't get me wrong. Against Detroit, there were some things I was frustrated with Thibodeau with, but if you're going to give Thibodeau a lot of blame for things that go wrong, I think you also need to give him some credit when things are going good. And you're right. I think Thibodeau absolutely outcoached Joe Mazzulla, and frankly, I also don't think that like getting frustrated. Like, one thing that I learned as I've watched sports longer is that like I think that getting frustrated with head coaches in big moments, it doesn't really prove that they're bad head coaches. It really just proves that they're in a lot of big moments and have a lot of opportunity to screw up. And like, I feel like the thing with head coaches, especially when they haven't won championships yet, is that they develop that type of reputation for some type of fatal flaw that they have. I mean, for how long have we heard that Andy Reid can't clock manage?
Oh, a long time.
How long that we heard that forever until he had Patrick Mahomes, and now now he's like a pretty large. It's not crazy to say he's the best head coach in the history of the NFL. People
offensive minded one for sure. Yeah.
People like he's very much neck and neck with Bill Belichick in terms of how he's viewed as an all-time great head coach. And one thing that my takeaway is not that he became so much better of a head coach. I mean, I'm sure he improved with like wisdom and time and all of that a fair bit, but like maybe it turns out the public was just kind of wrong. Like, he was always a great head coach. He just didn't have good enough players. He didn't have a good enough team around him. And I guess the same type of thing is true with Tom Thibodeau in a sense. And I think Knicks fans are not always wrong when they were frustrated with some of his coaching decisions. But you know what? You get frustrated with Thibodeau and his coaching decisions because he's in a lot of big spots. Like, how often were Knicks fans frustrated with Derek Fisher? Outside of the time that he lied and skipped practice to go bang Matt Barnes' ex-wife. Outside of that, I don't think Knicks fans were ever that frustrated with him, because you're not going to be frustrated with a team that wins 20 games in a season.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. Like, I felt the same way about Terry Collins when he was the Mets manager.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only Jets head coaches have I ever really been super frustrated with when they were like really bad teams. But outside of that, it's just I think Thibodeau is a good coach. And look, if you're going to blame him for all the stuff that went wrong with the Pistons, he deserves some credit for things that go good with the Celtics. And I'm not saying all of it is because of Thibodeau, but the same thing is true the other way around against Detroit. And Mazzulla, you're right. And I think that Joe Mazzulla has made a lot more blatantly bad coaching decisions than Thibodeau has in this series than Thibodeau did against Detroit. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms of Thibodeau is he overplays his starters. And that's why they were getting injured, which I think there might be a little bit of truth to it, but I think it's mostly BS. I think at the very worst, I think it might exacerbate injuries that already exist.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Thibodeau players were getting injured because they were overworked under Thibodeau.
Right. It could have happened any time. Personally.
Right. I don't think that ever happened. And last year, especially, there were just so many injuries, especially in the Eastern Conference. I always thought that whole thing was kind of silly. And a lot of the injuries that the Knicks roster had could not have been attributed to that. Bogdanovich, who hardly had any playing time anyway, was getting it. Mitchell Robinson, who doesn't get a lot of playing time, was already hurt. And I mean, by the way, we want to talk about. There's also in this series, though, I think there's so many X factors. And one thing that I will say about this series is the Knicks definitely did have some help from the Celtics, certainly in games 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly did. But I think the Knicks, I think it went the other way around too, which is that I think the Knicks playing as well as they did put a lot of panic into the Celtics and led to them playing dumb basketball. A huge part of the reason, look, I think the Celtics did a lot to help the Knicks win those games. They really did. And that they didn't have to. But I think it would have gone that way if the Knicks weren't playing so well, or if it was against a team that wasn't as good. And by the way, as bad as the Celtics were in those, in the final stretch of 3 of those 4 games, the Knicks had to be really on point in order to come back and win.
Mm-hmm.
And that can't be lost on us either.
No, I agree. I think that you were even talking about it on the playback stream last night, saying that people are making out to make this phenomenon that the Celtics just completely were just bricking shots left and right, which you could understand to a degree. But I mean, you talk about the clutchness of this Knicks team, right? Very similar to the clutchness of this from the Mets team or the OMG, time, that every single time that you can rely on somebody, and that's obviously something where you had to have the clutchness, by the way, Nick, against the Celtics team, because if you did not have that, there's no. I mean, I'm not saying you guys have no chance to win this series, but definitely your chances of having no clutches and trying to win the series is extremely slim. Because a lot of these type of close games that you guys had, you take away Jalen Brunson off that team. You take away Mikal Bridges off of that team, who's one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. OG Anunoby doing what he's doing. The Knicks aren't where they are probably right now. You're not looking at this 3-1 deficit, because when you're down 20 against the defending champs in a hostile environment, a lot of things have to go right. One of the biggest things that had to go right specifically for the Knicks, the Celtics had to shoot themselves out of a game. What's obviously that thing? We talk about coaching. Joe Mazzulla having the volume 3-point ball that he consistently has, and specifically live die by that 3 mentality, and he overdid it in that first game without a doubt. I mean, 19 of your 20 shot attempts when you're up by 20 points were 3-point attempts. That just straightly cannot happen. And then, of course, you go into overtime specifically. What happens? you're going against one of the most clutch players in the game and in the series, and that's Jalen Brunson. So if you want to keep this overall series close, make these games close, that's where I think we're now the Knicks. Well, now specifically because you take away Tatum, but Jalen Brunson is probably the most clutch player right now in the series. Um, so I agree with you, Nick. I think that the coaching from both sides, Thibodeau has been a lot better, and the late game execution, I got to hand it to the Knicks right now. They're making a lot more of the shots, and they're running more of an offense too, which I think for us, it's been kind of frustrating that when the games are getting tighter, we've had this even during our finals run last year. Whereas it's sometimes just like when you want to drive them to the basket, they're just they're just not shooting well with their shot selection. So um, that's the one thing about this Knicks team, Nick, which I do respect a lot. I think it's really special. Everybody's sharing the basketball. I mean, obviously Jalen Brunson's of course going to have his ISO time, because he's going to do his own thing. But there's a couple of passes that I saw, guys from Bridges and Towns. I remember that pass yesterday in the game yesterday, the cat pass to Mitchell Robinson, in which Cat was at the top of the key. I'm like, for a big man, that's insane. Like, because legitimately, I think, I don't know, Chris Stops or Al or somebody was right in front of Cat. And, like, of course, he was ready to play some defense. Another thing, too, Nick, the Celtics have played some pretty darn good defense at the end of some of these games. I mean, you look at the game yesterday. I'm not looking at it and saying that the Celtics were playing horrific defense. I was hearing Boston radio this morning saying, oh, the Celtics defense was not great at all during that. If you actually physically watch the game, the Knicks were making so many back-breaking type of shots. Mikal Bridges, a lot of midi shots, they're going straight in. OG Anunoby, I mean, I was watching that game with you on playback. I'm like, oh my God, like, and I'm not, and I credit to you guys. I mean, that's what you had to do to beat us. So, and you're gonna have to have that too against more likely than not Indiana because, oh my God, the clutchness that team has. I mean, especially in the Eastern Conference Finals, they go head to toe. I mean, they're a team specific that tested you. And another thing too, Nick, and I don't know if you agree with me or not. The Knicks, I think, got specifically a perfect first round matchup to prepare for a team like the Celtics. The Pistons are a gritty, hard-nosed type of team that does not have a lot of experience, but with the way that the Knicks had to play as an underdog mentality like the Pistons did to the Knicks, as a tough and gritty, you're not going to want to make it easy type of mentality to go and play a Celtics team that you're heavily favored with, I think that also played a little bit of a factor coming in.
I mean, I think that's half true. I would say I agree. I don't agree completely. I think that's partly true, I guess. I mean, like, okay, I think the reason the Knicks beat the Pistons is because they were much better situationally than the Pistons. And
I
it's
agree.
not even just that the Knicks were great situationally, but more that the Pistons were really bad situationally.
Yeah.
I think it had a lot more to do with that than anything. I mean, I guess that's true on some level, but I guess that could have happened with any team that gave them any trouble at all, which would have been anybody in the top six, which would have been like, oh, okay, maybe if the Knicks had played, say, Miami, like the Cavs did, they would have been less prepared. That very much could be true. But what I can tell you is if the Knicks played the way against Detroit, the way they play against the Celtics, they'd be down 3-1 instead of up 3-1. So, like, I mean, the Knicks could get away with a lot more against the Pistons than against the Celtics. Maybe, I mean, like, the other weird thing about this year is that, like, what do we keep hearing about with the Knicks? We kept hearing about how their record against top teams. Like, that's what we kept hearing about all season long. And their record against top teams and how they weren't good against top teams in the regular season. And they were only good against, mediocre teams or whatever. But against the top teams, they couldn't beat the Celtics or the Cavs or Oklahoma City. I'm not so much concerned about the West as I am about the East. Like if Oklahoma City becomes a problem in the playoffs, like, well, that's a successful season as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I was also like, I didn't think it was an unreasonable thing to bring up. Because it turns out that, like, you have to beat the top teams in order to, like, make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or anything like that. I mean, like when you're not, I mean, and in fairness, some of it was because of like Brunson's injuries and things like so. In some of those games that they weren't winning against quote unquote top teams, they didn't have Brunson and things like that. But the other thing you have to look at is this is the NBA season is very long. It starts in like late October, and now it's May, and we're in the second round of the playoffs. Teams evolve quite a bit. And what do we keep hearing about ad nauseum every playoff? Well, the game changes in the playoffs. And there's a lot of truth to that. The game really does change in the playoffs. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are much better built for the regular season than the postseason.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's not like, you look at the Rockets, they were number 2 in the West. How many people thought they were the Rockets were the second seed in the West. How many people thought they were the second most likely team to come out of the West? Almost nobody.
Probably not. No.
The Rocket, like a team like the Rockets, is very well built for the regular season, but right now they're not built very well for the postseason. And people are saying that about the Cavs too. I don't think that's entirely true. I mean, the best example would have been the Hawks team from 10 years ago that won 60 games and they beat the Brooklyn Nets in 6 games, and they were lucky to beat the Wizards because John Wall got hurt, and then they lost, I think, in 5 to the Cavs that year. They weren't a very good playoff team. And the same thing could be true with the Knicks, except the reverse, which is, I don't mean they're specifically built for the postseason, but like they weren't good against the top teams in the regular season, but maybe they play up to their competition in the postseason. Like that could, and by the way, against the Pistons, kind of played down to their competition. It was probably a little bit of both in that sense. But, for a team that we kept hearing about had no shot at beating the Celtics. I mean, I said that I thought that the gap between the Celtics and the Knicks was bigger than the Pistons and the Knicks, or that the Knicks were closer to the Pistons than the Celtics. And I had every reason to believe that. The Celtics were that much better than the Knicks. And on paper, they are. On paper, they really are that much better than the Knicks. And you know what? I don't think that – here's the thing, though. What's so good about this win is that I know it was a home game, but it's not like the Celtics played all that bad. It's not like Tatum had one of those games where he was terrible. Tatum put up 42 points.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Tatum had a phenomenal game and played most of the game. I mean, he played 40 minutes. He didn't get injured till the very end.
Right.
Derek White in the first half was on fire from 3.
Yeah.
It's not even like the team played terribly. I mean, the only guy who didn't play well was probably Al Horford, who was mostly a
Jalen wasn't great either.
Brown was okay. I mean,
he was okay, but I wanted more.
Look, the same thing was true with the Knicks, obviously. Like, there were some players that were on, some that were off. I mean, Bridges has been Towns played well, Brunson played well, Hart was terrible. He got into early foul trouble and hit a shot to save his life. Bridges was okay. He put up 23 points, but he took a whole lot of shots.
Yeah.
Bridges, I guess you could say I have very mixed feelings about Bridges.
Yeah.
I have very mixed feelings about him because on one hand, he's hitting these really clutch shots. You can't deny how clutch Bridges is. When we need him to hit these big shots, we need him to hit them. But it's usually in games where he's shot terribly for most of the game.
No, I agree.
That's the thing. Okay, he's really good in certain situations. And he's also a really good on-ball defender. I don't deny that, which is part of the reason we have him. But I also look at it maybe if he had hit 1 or 2 of those shots before, we wouldn't be in a clutch situation now.
I agree. No, I could definitely see that.
So, I think I kind of have mixed feelings with him. But look, overall, I think the trade was worth it for the 5 first-round picks for Bridges because I don't really think we'd be as good as we are without him.
I agree. Yeah, no, he's been doing well, and I think a lot of Knicks fans were very up and inconsistent with him, but I think he's really come around with kind of the way that he's been playing as of late. So I guess before we move on, just to do the Tatum stuff quick. Yeah,
I do want to talk about the Tatum injury, although it's very much connected to all of this. I felt really, really terrible for Jayson Tatum. I mean, like, that is really just awful. I don't wish that. I mean, I understand it's good for the Knicks. It's good for the Knicks this series, and it's good for the Knicks next season. But that really is just horrible. I mean, like, to see. I mean, the fact that his season might be over next season. I mean, like, he might
Pretty
not
much
come
done.
back. This is almost like the Aaron Rodgers like type of thing, where, like, I mean, the only difference is this is actually, in some ways, this is worse because it's the end of the playoffs, and next year, like, you're gonna have to wait. Like, there's a good chance you're gonna have to wait a whole year and a half until you finally watch him play again, and that really is terrible, especially for a star player like Tatum is. Um, I felt just terrible seeing that. I mean, look, the Knicks were probably going to win the series anyway, up 3-1. Not saying Boston can't come back from a 3-1 lead, but now without Tatum, it feels more insurmountable. But I just, on a human level, I feel terrible for what happened.
No, it's brutal. I After the game was over, I was just in. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. I mean, this was a guy too that was one of the most durable players in the league, and I think for a lot of Celtics fans that have been seeing on social media, um, basically saying in terms of how he would never get hurt, and even like some of the times he would get hurt, um, he would come back from it. And that's brutal. Um, I don't know where really the team goes from here. Obviously Brown and Derek White and Pritchard and all the guys, but it sucks. And they obviously have to. I wish him well. I mean, that's obviously the first thing. I don't think he's ever suffered an injury like this ever in his life, and it just kind of came out of fluke overall play. So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, no, it really is awful, and I just felt terrible that, like, he might not come back for another year and a half. Like, that's just really, really awful. I think that, I mean, the good news is, I guess, if you look on the bright side, I guess, is the Celtics will still be a really good team. They'll still be one of the top teams in the East.
Mm,
And keep in mind, Tatum is not. I'm just trying to make you feel a little better.
mm,
Tatum is not. It's one of the few, like, number one options in the NBA who doesn't have to be great in order to win. I mean,
agree.
this last year, Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP. Uh,
Yeah,
so, I mean, there have been times when Tatum has been a total non-factor and has been able to win, and including winning a championship. He did not have a good series, and they won in 5 games, and it wasn't close. So it's not like the Celtics aren't a good team without. Um,
yeah,
they're
they're like in terms of record wise, they're actually not terrible without him. But I think just the presence of him on the court, I think just it spreads out to everyone, and um, basically all the players after the game were pretty much asking in terms of the overall game, and they were basically saying the loss is the loss, but more of our focus is on this. So I even think no, I mean 3-1 series. I think players now at this point in time. I mean, this is obviously just not a knock on like we're checking out per se, but like as they say in sports, you always have that alpha, and Tatum's obviously really alpha of the team, whether people want to say it or not. Um, but yeah, no, I agree. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be like a top 5 type of team. I mean, you take Tatum out, he averages about 25, 30 points a game. He just elevates specifically consistently. You take him off the court. Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Pritchard, and another thing too with the Celtics is, you probably won't have Kristaps Porzingis next year. Al Horford is getting up there another year in age. So, and another thing too is the Celtics do have new ownership coming in the next couple of years. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. So I do think that they might have to go over the second apron maybe to get some guys. So I agree with you, Nick. I think I mean, you said that they're going to be a very good team. I don't know if they're going to be very good, but I think they're going to be still okay, like decently. But regardless of the fact, like, just it sucks too because it was the first time the Celtics and Knicks had played in the playoffs in forever, and just like if Jalen Brunson had kind of an injury like this, which I would never wish for, or anybody on the Knicks, like I feel the same exact type of way. This obviously is just kind of bigger than sports at the end of the day at times, and just especially for it happens to one of your favorite players. And he's one of the biggest now in terms of new era of Boston sports. You just take a look at just not the Celtics, but in Boston sports. Jayson Tatum from Jay Will today said he's up there in all times for 50-point games already for overall the age that he has. So it's just devastating, man. It really is devastating. And all I basically have to say is, I'm wearing his shirt for an overall reason, not because he's one of my favorite players out there, but just like I know for a fact he's going to come back better than ever whenever he comes back.
Moving the Goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. I do want to talk about the Mavericks winning the draft lottery.
Uh-huh.
I think this whole thing is really funny because it's really funny because all of the NBA is rigged people are just jumping on this.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of I think that every sport has certain integrity issues, or at least the perception of integrity issues. Like with the NFL, a lot of it was like domestic violence for many years, and also like issues with like concussions and player safety and things like that, which also just are inherent to the game. Baseball, it was like steroids, but the NBA has dealt with the issue of games of the league being rigged, and some sort of broader conspiracy like that is, I would say, like perpetuated by the top is how I would put it. Like the NBA has it's much more of a conspiracy. Like there's a lot of conspiracies with the NBA, and they do it a little bit with other sports too. But you don't hear it nearly as much as you do with the NBA. And I guess there have been some issues with the NBA and like the Tim Donaghy scandal, which we haven't had in like baseball or football. But it is obviously like an issue that the NBA has is the perception that things are just rigged. Now I mean, including things like the 84 draft lottery being rigged, people have said. And I don't really buy into the argument. I don't buy the argument that the NBA is rigged. I think the reason I don't buy into the argument that the NBA is rigged is because even though there are certain things that do happen that would happen if it were rigged, or at least look like would happen if it were rigged, I also think that like there's a whole lot of things that like there's a whole lot of storylines that happen in the NBA that don't look like it would if it were rigged at all. Like, okay, maybe this Mavericks Lakers thing looks a little bit like it would if it were rigged. But like maybe if it really were rigged, they would have like covered it up a little more. They would have made it like if this is almost like too obvious to actually be rigged. Like I feel like if they actually did rig it, it wouldn't look like this. Like I think that actually the Mavericks I think the whole thing is silly.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing is really just kind of silly. So you're telling me that they told Nico Harrison to trade Luka Doncic to the Lakers and guaranteed the number one lottery pick? That doesn't make a ton of sense.
It doesn't add up either.
I mean, even that is not even that good of a deal. For the Mavericks. Like, even that is not that good of a deal. It could just be that Nico Harrison is just a bit of a nut. That really could just be it.
Oh, he is. Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see much of this because obviously kind of the way that things transpired yesterday. But yeah, it's just kind of hilarious how, a team specifically that, is kind of in the NBA world after the Luka trade and kind of all of their their stupid stuff from the front office and Nico Harrison, of course, all the comments that he made, and now get into the draft lottery and just the conspiracy theories that are out there of, saying the Mavericks apparently are rigging the system. I mean, like, listen, like it could have happened with really any type of team, but like it's like the scapegoat type of, route, I guess, for this.
Yeah. Well, no, so I'm just looking at all the top picks and all the teams that won the lottery. I mean, last year, Atlanta, I mean, like, if you look at most of the teams that win the lottery and the star players that have gone there, it looks nothing like it would if it were rigged. Like, with Zion Williamson have gone to last year, the Hawks won the lottery. Okay. The year before that, San Antonio. And the year before that, Orlando. So Paolo Banchero went to the Orlando Magic. And Cade Cunningham went to the Pistons. All of these sort of like look. I mean, and Anthony Edwards going to the Timberwolves, and Zion Williamson going to the Pelicans. Like, do these really look like results that they would look like if it were rigged? Like, was Zion Williamson? What would the league rather have had happen? Zion Williamson going to the Pelicans or going to the Knicks? Like, what do you think they'd rather do?
The Knicks.
Like obviously, they'd rather them go to the big market team. So it's like. Mm-hmm. So, like, yes, there are certain things that do happen that the league does want to happen.
Yeah.
Or would prefer to happen. But there's also so many things that also happen that really just don't. There's all that the league doesn't want and doesn't fit that description at all. So you have to look at it both ways and not only look at the things that happen that the league might want to happen. Like, to me, like, that's obviously. Like, how do you only look at one and not the other? Like, how come it was a whole bunch of smaller market teams and mid-market teams that have been winning the draft lottery? Second of all, why would the NBA even want the Mavericks to win the draft lottery? Like, I can understand the NBA wanting Luka Doncic on the Lakers.
Yeah.
I can understand that. But why would they want the Mavericks to win the draft lottery? Like, if anything, why would they want them? Like, if anything, wouldn't they want a team like the Knicks to win the draft lottery or something like that? Or really big market team, or like maybe Chicago. Like, and by the way, people like hate the lottery. For me, I think it's good because I guess it kind of disincentivizes tanking a little bit. I have no issues with the lottery. I'm kind of fine with it, I would say. I don't think teams should be rewarded for tanking or anything like that. But yeah, the lottery is rigged thing, I think is just such nonsense. It is such nonsense. However, it is funny to me that the NBA is so bad at not looking rigged. That will never not be funny to me.
Yeah, and this is why I'm not the biggest in terms of the draft lottery stuff, because it's like people like freak out about it as well too, which is insane, for the teams. Oh, like we got the first or the second overall pick or the third pick, and it's like at the end of the day, right? You don't know about any like half of these kids that are young kids that are coming up. It's really like a luck of the draw, and unless like like I don't know, like there's some guys that you just kind of know will click. I mean, Travis Hunter probably is going to be an example just recently from this draft. But you just don't really know for a lot of these type of guys, to be honest.
Yeah, you never do. But like to me, it's just like I just don't think any of this is actually really true.
No, it's not.
Like the whole rigged thing. Like I don't buy it. I think it's completely.
Because the thing is, like, for the team specifically that are not a fan of this team, like you wouldn't say that if it wasn't your team.
Well, I never like the problem with these conspiracy theorists is that like there's always like no matter what happens, there is a justification for why it was rigged.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's actually I think there was a website, it might still be up, that like gives a reason for why the lottery is rigged for whichever team wins it that year. Like there's a justification no matter what. Like no matter what, there's a justification for why it's rigged. In fact, I would like to find that because I think that's really funny. Like there's always some type of reason for why the lottery is rigged. And in that case, it's like, all right, now you're just doing mental gymnastics to try and like justify your pre-existing view that the lottery is rigged. Like at that point, it just gets really silly.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about the Pacers. They are up 3-1 by the time the show comes out. They might win the series, though I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll likely be 3-2. And this obviously determines who the Knicks play in the Eastern Conference Finals, assuming the Knicks beat the Celtics. God forbid they don't.
But imagine that too. Like I've been seeing all these people saying, "Oh, it'd be really hilarious if the Knicks blew a 3-1 series lead to a Jayson Tatum-less type of team." Like, think about this: like the Knicks weren't favored to win this overall series beforehand, so the Knicks basically at this point in time are playing with house money. It's like them playing against the Dodgers.
Not anymore. They're not. The Celtics are the team playing with house money now.
I'm talking about coming in though to the series and before the playoffs. I mean. Did you think it was championship or bust for this Knicks team before the playoffs? To be frankly honest,
I don't think it's championship or bust now either.
Right.
Expect them to win the championship. I'd like to look at the odds. Maybe I'd place a bet on that, and there's a good chance that like I would maybe place a bet on that. But look, the odds makers. I don't know what the odds will look like with the Pacers and the Knicks. That would just be interesting to me.
It would.
Now, odds are the Knicks are more likely to beat the Pacers than the Cavs. And the biggest reason I say that is because the Knicks at least have home court against the Pacers.
Yep.
For that game 7, assuming it goes 7 games, which, by the way, that type of thing is underrated. That decides series. That does a lot in a lot of series. Like there's a lot of times when teams are just evenly matched, and just because one team has game 7 at home, then that's why they win. And that certainly could be the case in this series too. So like obviously on any statistical realistic level, the Knicks are more likely to beat the Pacers than the Cavs. But I am not that confident in the Knicks beating the Pacers. I am very, very not confident in them being able to beat the Cavs, especially if they come back from a 3-1 lead and have all that momentum. But the Pacers are a really, really good team.
Yeah.
They really are good, I think that they have amazing. Their offense is great. They have incredible ball movement, and they have a whole bunch of guys who can hit threes. I've never seen a team get as many open looks as the Pacers do. I think the Pacers are really good, and I think they really could beat the Knicks, and I think they could give the Knicks a lot of trouble. I don't know who the more likely team, and by the way, the Knicks defense is not great, and the Pacers really could give them a lot of trouble. And I mean, I don't even know how much of an advantage home court gives the Knicks, because they're not that. They haven't been good. They haven't been a good home team in the playoffs so far. So I mean, they're undefeated on the road, but they haven't been great at home. So there's a whole lot of question marks there.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the Pacers being a really good team. I mean, I think that sweep that we had in the Eastern Conference Finals, people think that stuff was easy. That was definitely one of the most misleading in terms of, I think they were the toughest team that we faced the whole entire run last year into the championship. I kid you not. They play with a ton of pace, hence the name Pacers. Their defense is very, very connected. They got a pretty decent, in terms of the coach, they got a pretty damn good coach in Rick Carlisle. Halliburton, Siakam, Turner, all the guys specifically can give the other type of team issues, and they all play with different type of play styles. I mean, Turner obviously can pick and pop. Halliburton can play with pace. He obviously is very good defensively. Siakam can really just hit you down low. For a team like the Knicks, who, like you said, aren't a great defensive type of team, this is a very, very tough type of test then, because Indiana, like you said, they pass the ball a lot. Honestly, probably a lot more than the Celtics do at times in terms of their swing at times, especially when, they scored, I think it was almost 60% from 3 in the last game against Cleveland in the first half. And Cleveland is no joke defensively. So yeah, I mean the Pacers, I think, are remembering what happened last year too in the Eastern Conference Finals. They want the revenge back, and they want to get to the finals this year. I think they have a really, really good chance to. So I agree with you, Nick. This Pacers team, I mean, the Celtics obviously are, I think, are a very good test specifically for you guys to play a team like the Pacers. But just coming at it from firsthand in the Eastern Conference Finals, who would have thought the team that beat us this year, more likely than not, is going to have to take on the team that we beat to go to the finals. Possibly could do the exact same thing this year for your team.
Yeah, and now the Knicks just have a really, really good chance at winning the finals or making the finals. I mean, I don't like I said, I don't expect them to, but like the odds are as good as I've ever seen them for the Knicks, and it felt like such a daunting task throughout the rest of the season. Like I've said many times, I didn't think their defense would be good enough to beat the Celtics. I guess
Mhm.
I guess it's sometimes moments like that. I guess in a weird way, it changed my whole perspective on sports.
Yeah,
It-
no, and I do think too. I mean, if I ask you this too, if the Celtics at least split one of those two games, right?
the
And
next two games.
well, the first two in terms of game one and two, at least they took one of them. Do you think that this?
Oh, I see. You're saying if it had happened.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think that this series specifically is still in Boston's favor, or do you think that with the fact that the Knicks now are up to 3-1, um, that it's like okay, it's a basically done deal that they don't have a shot?
Well, I don't think anything's a done deal. I wouldn't go that far, but
Well, in terms of just the overall momentum, I'm talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think if this series was a 2-2, even without Tatum, I'd be far less confident.
Right.
Look, the Celtics without Tatum are favored by 4.5 points against the Knicks.
Crazy. I can't
Uh,
even believe that.
I mean, that's how good the Celtics just are. So, I could see the Knicks winning that game, but
It's close.
yeah, in that case, even like if the Celtics win next game, that's a 3-2 lead for the Knicks. But if they had split, they'd be down 3-2. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think that makes a huge difference. I think the series would likely actually probably be in favor. I would favor the Celtics over the Knicks if they had been tied at 2-2. I would say.
So you have
Uh,
best two out of three in Boston.
yeah, if they had split the first two games.
Yeah.
Although the truth is, like we're creating a scenario in our heads.
Yeah.
It's the fallacy of a predetermined outcome. Because if they had split the first two games, well, maybe the Knicks would have won 2 games in a row at the Garden, and they'd be up
Yeah.
3-1 anyway. So,
Yeah.
it's hard to say
Mm.
exactly, like
I
what
mean,
exactly would have happened if they had split the first two games. But yes, in that scenario, I do agree. It would be in favor. I think the odds would be in favor of the Celtics even without Tatum. But I think the 3-1 lead is the biggest thing. Like,
mhm.
even if Tatum was still there, uh, I would still say the series. I would still favor the Knicks over them.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about this. Pete Rose and this is good for you because you host the Hitting for the Cycle podcast. Pete
Yeah.
Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, taken off the ineligible list. And of course, they waited for Pete Rose to die. Shoeless Joe has been dead for 74 years. He's been dead for longer than he's been alive. And now they're taking him off the ineligible list. And for me, I do have an issue with this. I have an issue with this. And it's not that they took him off the ineligible list. My issue is, why are you waiting for Pete Rose to die to take him off the ineligible list? Like, if anything, it would have made more sense if he had been ineligible. I don't take an issue with them banning him from working with Major League Baseball or anything like that. But in terms of like the Hall of Fame, he's the all-time hits leader. He's obviously a Hall of Famer. Uh,
Mhm.
like I could understand maybe if he was like on the fence between being a Hall of Famer and not being a Hall of Famer, and the gambling scandal, it kind of what sets it over the edge. I would understand that, but he's clearly a Hall of Famer, and they should have taken him off the ineligible list while he was still alive. Maybe if they had banned him for like 20 years, whatever it was, a certain period of time, and then he can get into the Hall of Fame, I would understand that a little more. But why is it that they waited for, and I said they would do this, by the way. I said they would do this. Why is it that you're waiting for him to die before you take him off and then allow him into the Hall of Fame. What changed since he's been alive, since he's been dead, that now allows him into the Hall of Fame? It's just so logically inconsistent. And like, why? Like, if anything, they should have done the opposite and rushed to get him into the Hall of Fame while he was still alive, so he can at least enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like why is it that why is it that they're doing this where they're not even like, okay, Shoeless Joe Jackson died in 1951. So he's been dead for a long time. But like, to me, my thought is, I think that you should not wait for somebody to die before you give them a reward. Like, why is it that you're doing that? Like, if anything, they should have done the opposite and said, look, we should put him into the Hall of Fame while he's still alive. That would make more sense than waiting for somebody to die to put them into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no, I don't get it at all. I mean, we talked about Pete Rose, I think, on another episode about him in the Hall of Fame in terms of like, should you put him on the Hall of Fame? It's like, no, because the time of it, like, he's not alive anymore. So it's the same exact type of situation here in which, you've taken him off the ineligible type of list and you can't even enjoy it because you're not even around with us anymore. It's just really weird. And the time of it it doesn't really make a lot of sense in that type of case. So I don't really get it, to be honest.
Yeah, it doesn't. Look, I'm not opposed to them putting him into the Hall of Fame. I've said many times they should put him into the Hall of Fame. But waiting for him to die to put him into the Hall of Fame almost seems like cruel in a sense.
Yeah, no.
It almost seems cruel. Like you're not, like, what is even really the point? He can't like celebrate it. He can't enjoy it. Is that the goal to like, we're fine putting you into the Hall of Fame, but you're not allowed to enjoy it? Like, it just doesn't even make any sense. And all of the reasons that he shouldn't have been in the Hall of Fame that you would give when he was alive, all of that applies now that he's dead. It doesn't really, like, all of those things still apply now that he's dead. Like, none of that changes. The story didn't change. I mean, Shoeless Joe Jackson, they just included him in with Pete Rose. They were like, all right, I guess we could put him in there too. And I would say he probably had Hall of Fame. I mean, he played with in bare feet, basically. He played 100 years ago. So I don't, but yeah, I'm sure he's a Hall of Famer too, in terms of his numbers.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I think he should be a Hall of Famer too. Like anybody, I think Barry Bonds should be a Hall of Famer. Are they going to do the same thing with him?
Yeah.
Are they going to do the same thing with him too? Like, they're going to wait for him to die before they put him into the Hall of Fame?
I just don't get it. And another thing too, like I told you about before, Nick, was with the Pete Rose and the Hall of Fame stuff, is when you want to celebrate a massive reward and accomplishment, you don't just want to celebrate it by yourself. I mean, heck, if I'm legitimately winning a award for baseball or podcasting or whatever it is, like I want to celebrate specifically when I'm, number one, alive, and two, when I'm with around people. And it's basically in this overall type of case of like, yeah, like, we understand, like, he should be able to be in this type of thing, right? We have nothing against it, but it's like you're just putting it now, which I just do not get.
Yeah, right. That's the whole point. And people have been saying this for so long, and I don't understand it. Like, I honestly don't understand the logic behind it. I don't understand the logic behind it that he can be in the Hall of Fame as long as he's dead. I understand like I said, I understand the lifetime ban from him working with the MLB, but I think that's a little bit different than putting him into the Hall of Fame. Like, to me, I think the Hall of Fame should be the should be the best players. And like, if you're clearly good enough to be a Hall of Famer, just like Barry Bonds and A-Rod and all these guys, I mean, and Kurt Schilling, they should all be in the Hall of Fame. And to me, if these guys, like, to me, if the Hall of Fame doesn't allow Kurt Schilling, Barry Bonds, A-Rod, Pete Rose, if they don't allow those guys into the Hall of Fame, to me, the Hall of Fame is a joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just unserious to me if you're not putting these guys in because of what they did when they're clearly good enough to be Hall of Famers. And I mean, look, there's a lot of that. This is how a lot of these baseball writers are. Like they won't put any steroid guys in. And to me, it's like, I understand if you're on the fence and you took steroids, then you don't get in. But to not allow players that are just great enough players to get in, even without steroids. And by the way, a whole lot of guys were using steroids at the time. None of them were great. Paul Duke used steroids too. Barry Bonds wasn't the only guy who used steroids. A-Rod wasn't the only guy who used it. I mean, as far as we know, A-Rod used steroids for when he was with the Rangers, which were his best years statistically. But he was a Hall of Famer, even if you take out his time with the Rangers. I mean, just his career with the Yankees was a Hall of Fame career itself. To me, the whole thing is ridiculous.
It just, yeah, I mean, we pretty much got the whole entire thing of just how incompetent the overall type of ruling is to have it where he's just simply not with the same one.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's our show this week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Ben Kruse. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Ben at Ben Kruse144. You can follow the show at MTGP ETB and the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. I'll be back next week. See you guys then.
See you guys.